Okay, so this guy calls me up and he says to me that he'll never believe what happened. He was in a shul, in a certain place of Chutz La'aretz. It doesn't really make a difference which one it was, where it was. It's all irrelevant. But the idea is basically the same. He was in a shul, and somebody went to the back of the shul to get a sefer. He found an English sefer in Hilchos Shabbos, and he opened it up and he started reading it. Maybe he was bored during Chazoros Hashatz, Hashem Yirachim. Anyway, so he opens up the sefer, and it came to today's halacha. The guy told me the story. He says to me, he walked to the middle of the shul, whatever it was. He came over to his friend. He says, "Look at this! What a load of rubbish! Unbelievable!" And the guy calls me up and says to me, "Which halacha was it discussing?" Today's halacha, right? Which is a continuation from last year, which is discussing the halachas of tanning, if you remember. And we're talking today. The Olam asked, "What's with vegetables?" We're talking about vegetables. The halachas of salting vegetables. What a load of rubbish! Hashem Yirachim. That's what someone said. Why? Never heard such a thing in my life. Can't be. Can't be. No, it just cannot be. Not possible. It cannot be there's a problem with taking salt and putting it on a cucumber. Lo shamanu v'lo ve'inu. We never heard such a thing. Doesn't exist. In fact, somebody once told me this. He calls me up. It's an African guy, actually. He called me up and he says to me, maybe he wasn't. Whatever it was. He says to me like this. He says, he came over to me, asked me, "What's the halacha about this?" He says, "I know my father is very, very makpid, but my shver is not makpid." Huh? What does that mean? Is there a choice over here? These are not chumras, these are not a list of suggestions. If you'd like to do them, no problem. If not, it doesn't work that way. These are halachas, clear-cut, gemaras, Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, very simple, okay? So now, with that little bit of an introduction, let's discuss today's halacha. Yes, last time we discussed the inyan of salting, and we discussed the process of how they used to take the skins of the animal, and they used to preserve them in order to make a cloth for a Sefer Torah, tefillin, or in the Mishkan, the hides that go over the Mishkan. Today we're moving on to a D'Rabbanan. It's true, it's a D'Rabbanan, but as we always say, the D'Rabbanan fire is also very, very hot. Right, my Rosh Yeshiva Shambek Zatzal always used to quote the Aruch HaShulchan. If a person says, "You guys have heard this from me so many times, sound like a broken record already." It's only a D'Rabbanan. Just make sure he's not number 10 in the minyan, because you can't be mistaken for the minyan. Can't mistaken for the minyan. Anyone that says, "It's only a D'Rabbanan," Beseda. Chas v'sholem. Right? The Torah says this in D'Rabbanans, right? Sofik D'Rabbanan midaraisa l'chumra. Right? Right, Shimon? That's how it goes. Avada. Okay. Now, let's move on. What is the problem with taking salt and putting it on a cucumber? What shaykhs? We asked at the beginning of this halacha, if you remember, we said, what is this nageya? In the days of the Mishkan, they took the hides of the animal and they preserved them in salt water and various things. How is this nageya to us? Nobody came up with anything. So we already came up with the inyan of a shoehorn. We talked about contact lenses, which, by the way, is important to remember. I think we had a hasofa, nasameh. We had a hasofa, right? That's only if it mamash gets hard. If it's still soft, there's no problem. It has to be out for a good 5 minutes, right? We said that? To make that clear, I don't want to get in trouble otherwise, right? Only if the lens is out for a good amount of time, then putting it back in will be problematic. Now, let's talk about salting foods. What is the problem with taking salt and putting it on a cucumber? Shlomo, are you with me? What's the problem? So there are two problems, okay? There's Shitas Rashi and there's Shitas Rambam. The Rashi says in Ayin Gimel, what is the problem? That it actually is mesakin. It fixes up and improves the vegetable. It makes it better. If that's the case, says Rashi, that's what it's nichal in this. Okay, it's a D'Rabbanan, I'm asking to you, right? But a person could get confused with real tanning. A person could get confused with pouring salt onto hides of animals. The made of Rashi, it's asa. Okay? As I state in Rashi. The Rambam, in Hilchos Shabbos Chav Beis Paskins, in different reason, he says that since the Issa over here resembles cooking, hitainas, the Rambam, and therefore it's asa. So in both cases, whether you learn like Rashi or the Rambam, it's for sure it's a D'Rabbanan, because it resembles something else. But Be'ikr, according to Rashi, Rashi learns on the Mishnah in Shabbos Ayin Gimel that salting vegetables is doimah to that which was done. Now, the question is, what is included in the Issa? Does this mean, has anybody ever seen, is this a normal thing to do? To put salt on vegetables? Has anyone ever seen that? You've seen someone do that, right, David? You've seen someone do that, right? It's a normal thing. I'm not crazy. It's not, what? It's just because in Toronto. It's hello. At the end of the day, if you've seen it, you might think it's normal, but now you know it's not normal, because it's not a normal thing to do on Shabbos. Nobody breaks Shabbos. You had a question, yes?
know when you prepare eggplant, you put salt on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it draws out the moisture.
Very good, very good, exactly correct. Very good. When you take the eggplant, or as us English people call it, what do we call it again? Aubergine. Very good. I'm already starting to forget. Shem Yerachim. You got American guys have already got to me. Adam Moishech Achas Pimov. So aubergine and an eggplant. I don't know if you've ever seen this. When you sprinkle the salt on it, it draws out the bitterness. By the way, the Rashi says this, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Heilige Balatanya brings this down as one of the problems. It takes out the mariras, it takes out the bitterness of something. I don't know if you've ever done this. I've done this. I always tell you, you guys, Baruch Hashem, you guys are sitting and learning. I'm doing experiments. So I've done this in my house. I've cut cucumbers, and then you sprinkle a few grains of salt. Watch it. It's unbelievable. Those grains of salt will become very, very wet very quickly. It draws out the moisture. It's an amazing, amazing thing. That's what it does. It's mitzias. Now, by the way, a lot of people say, shkoyach, I'm not doing it for that. It's very beautiful that you're coming here today and you're telling me that I'm not allowed to salt my cucumber because this reason, that reason. It's not why I'm doing it. Why am I doing it? I like it salty. I like the taste. There's no problem. That doesn't make a difference. That's not, the Indian doesn't work. Even if you're not doing it for that purpose, at the end of the day, since this is what it does, then it's included, okay? Now, what is included in salting? So Rashi says very clearly, which is Paskin Halach and Shulchan Aruch, and Siman Shin Chavalav, and that is like this. 1 piece is always mutter. 2 pieces is asa. As so steht in Rashi. Rashi says very, very clearly that 2 pieces is considered to be the problem, and therefore it's going to be asa. Even, says Rashi, if you're going to eat it shortly. So I'm doing 2 pieces of cucumber, 2 pieces of tomato, in order to eat them now. That's asa. That is an issa d'Rabbanon of salting of ma'abed on Shabbos as well. And the reason for that is because even if you're about to eat it, at the end of the day, since the salt does its job, as I mentioned to you, it does, so it's going to be problematic. And they asked from Nissan Karel at Zatzal, what happens, like how much salt is included? Is there a share? And he said no. There is no share with how much salt is included in it. It's a little bit of a sprinkle. What? You can do 1 piece at a time, correct. That's halacha number 1. By the way, we'll come to other Eterim. We have other Eterim as well. First we have to explain the Issa. There's a reason I always explain why Issa Veheta is called Issa Veheta. First you have to know it's Asa. It's Asa. L'maisa they're Heterim. It's like the Chofetz Chaim. If I remember correctly, somebody came to Chofetz Chaim and asked him a shayla in Chol HaMoed. We might have mentioned this in the Chol HaMoed shir. And he said, you have to understand, when it comes to Chol HaMoed, everything is guilty until proven innocent. I think this is very unconstitutional. Is that right? The Constitution says the opposite, right? Das batim fuchla das Torah. Al Kaponim, it's very clear that everything is guilty and proven innocent. Issa veheta. Okay? Now, if that's the case, it means, says from Nissan, how do we come on to that? Oh, 1 piece, right. So 1 piece is going to be okay. Correct, very good. And there's no share whatsoever in that case. Now, which food is included? And this is very important to know. Which food is included in this Issa? So the general halacha is like this. The Mishnah Berurah brings down that only a food that is normally preserved is going to be problematic. Any fruit or vegetable, we'll get to fruit in a minute, vegetables that are not generally preserved, nobody does anything to them to keep them, which by the way are very, very few. Because if you go to the stores before Shabbos, Kenai Nahor v'tzitzach, you've got all the, every type of vegetable, every type of dip, every type of everything. They put mayonnaise and vinegar, they put oil, they put all sorts of things over there to preserve it, to keep it going. Right, you can buy these things 3 weeks later, they're still in the fridge. Right? It's the same thing. They just preserve it for weeks and weeks on end. It's kavaldik. So anything that's normally preserved is included in the Issa. So for example, just to give you a small list, cucumbers, onions, garlic, peppers, radishes, carrots, cabbage, lettuce, and tomatoes will be included. Whereas, for example, corn. I don't think corn is preserved, as far as I know. I mean, they freeze it, but that's just for the sake of just, simple. It's not preserved. It's not, they don't do anything with it to keep it longer. I thought maybe the same thing with avocado. It can't last that long. The Metzias says avocado cannot last that long, so you can't really preserve it. I think I'm right with this list. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. If they've done the Metzias, they've done checks over here. But, I think those two should be okay. Baby corn could be also included in that. Could be okay. Correct. In other words, that you'd be able to salt, because that doesn't look like you're trying to preserve it, because nobody does that. Is it preserved? Is it just in water? Just to keep the moisture? No, are they just keeping the wetness of it, the moisture of it? Whereas, for example, tomatoes and these, coleslaw for example, what's coleslaw? You put mayonnaise in there, it can last for, you put cabbage in the fridge after a couple of days, it's gone bad. You put it with mayonnaise, it can last for a long time. So that would be the difference, okay? What about cooked foods? What about something that's cooked already? Is that included in the Issa? For example, cooked vegetables, would that also be included? And the answer is generally it's mutter to add salt to any cooked food, with the exception of bishul. Obviously, if it's boiling hot, you've got to be worried about bishul, because if it's hot, salting anything on Shabbos is an issa of bishul. The Shulchan Aruch tells us that in Siman Shin Yud Ches Sif Yud. The person has to be very, very careful, making sure that he does not salt anything that is boiling hot, because salt gets cooked. Two Rishonos in the Gemara. I'm not going to go into it at this moment of time. We've discussed Tochos bishul. So therefore, if it is cooked laibi, then it's okay. What if you have a salad with half? Well,
preserve cooked things too nowadays.
yeah, it's true. But once it's cooked, it's not the normal thing to preserve it. We do. What do you mean? How do we preserve it anyway? What does that mean? You put it in the fridge. You're not preserving it for that long. You're not doing. First of all, putting it in the fridge. Putting it in the fridge is putting it in an environment of coldness. I'm not doing anything to the actual food itself, which resembles this halacha, which is what they did in the Mishkan. That's the difference. Now, what happens, Levi Yitzchak? What happens if I have a salad, half with things that I'm allowed to salt, and half with things that I'm not allowed to salt? For example, a chicken salad. I've got pieces of cooked chicken with tomatoes and cucumbers. What's the halacha in this case? No, Rabbi Sai, what do I tell you? Hello? What's that?
What's the reason you do it? The main part, the chicken.
You're allowed to do it?
Chicken's the main part of the salad.
Chicken's the main part of the salad? We're going to ikkiv tofa. What bracha would you make on such a salad? You go basaroi pashtus, right? Now, Yitzchak, what are you telling me? You could do it or not? You could?
We said you can't do it if you don't want the actual thing to happen.
Right, but maybe over here I have chicken in there.
But there's no difference. Like we said, whatever happens.
So the answer is like this. We go basaroi. If roiv of the salad is chicken or of items that I'm allowed to salt, then it's no problem. If roiv of the salad is vegetables with a bit of chicken inside there, then it would be asa. Now, what's that? You go basaroi by brachos also, by the way.
Okay, fine, but when you want to salt it and you don't want it to get...
That's different. It's not basaroi. It's my kavanah right now is to add salt to the vegetables. It happens to be that it causes something to happen. And the Chazal will convey, since at the end of the day it causes something to happen, it's going to be asa. Whereas in the salad, you're right, that the cucumber in the salad, it's going to be happening theoretically. Right. But since the whole idea is a resemblance idea, it doesn't resemble it if most of it is chicken. Here? Getting there? Mamish not? Does everyone else hear this? Have I made this clear? If it's right, it's okay? It's here with me? You don't like it? Why not? Why do you not like it?
Because it doesn't matter what you're doing. When you're doing it,
You're saying like Shmuel, basically.
It's
I mean,
the exact thing.
no, again, that's what I'm trying to explain. It's not a din in intention. By the case of the cucumber, my intention is for taste, but the Mitzvah says it does something. Asa, why? Because it does something, and therefore it resembles salting. Over here, when I have a bowl of salad, most of it's chicken. There's a couple of cucumbers sprinkled, in there as well. So I'm sprinkling salt. Does the maisa resemble a maisa of salting? When I look at it, again, the issa over here, remember, is a resembling issa. Does it when I salt it, right? Oh, you held it was mutter anyway, right, Dovi? You held it was mutter anyway.
What's that? What does it have to rive? What does it have to rive then?
No, because if the rive of it is something that's mutter to salt, it no longer, the whole issa as it looks. Can't roll your eyes and say, oh, it only looks, because that's what Rashi and the Rambam are both saying in this issa. What? It might be doing something to the cucumbers. I'm not arguing with you. No one is. But the Metzias is, if it's a resembling halach, if the whole gzeira, what is this, by the way? What is this? This is a gzeira that if you do this, you may come to do that. That's basically what it is, right? Yeah. Now, if roiv of the mixture is a chicken, which I'm allowed to do, it no longer resembles when I'm doing something that's similar to what I did in the Mishkan. And therefore, there's no problem. There's no gzeira in that case.
Why is it 95% chicken and 5%? It could be 55%.
Okay, now I ask a different question. Now asking, how do you define roiv? 51%, or does that do roiv hanika? That's a different shaila. But Pashtus is if it looks mostly chicken more than anything else, then that will be okay. Again, and the reason I think it's pretty key. So you're still with me, you still don't like it. You hearing it? The gzeira was only when it looks that we'll get to that. Here it doesn't look that way, maybe we won't get that. Even if it will happen. Okay, now, let's get to some of the heterim, right? Because we love heterim.
is it only salt?
Oh, very good. We'll try to get to that. Ooh, a few minutes we have. Okay, so Shimon already told us clearly that one piece is mutter, because he learnt Rashi, and Rashi says 2 pieces, and therefore we're medayik in Rashi, that if the Rashi says 2, then 1 is 100% mutter. There is no problem whatsoever in that case of salting 1 piece. That is fine. By the way, providing, says the Magen Avraham, that there's not another piece next to it. You can't salt 1 piece nasameya if you've got another piece next to it. It's just not going to work, because then basically it's salted 2 pieces. It's not a joke. You can't do that. Okay? By the way, the Magen Avraham brings a Bach, right? The Heilige Bach from Meshbush, where the Bach says the minig is not to do this. We don't even salt 1 piece. Sheben, are you listening? The Magen Avraham brings the Bach and says we're not doing this because there are many who are machmeh, and therefore we don't even salt 1 piece. Okay? So what would be the idea? The idea would be like this. If you have vegetables on your fork or on your spoon, you could salt them to eat them immediately. We said before eating them immediately won't help. But over here, it so much looks that I'm doing it now, there's no problem. And therefore, if I've got the spoon, mamish in front of me, held up, I've got the fork with a couple of pieces of vegetables, even more than 1, I can salt it and eat it straight away. Because there it's clay. Even if it's on my plate, I can't do that. Even if my intention is to eat it miyad. But if it's on my fork, then that would be a heta. A very big heta would be, how do you make salad dressings on Shabbos? A lot of salad dressings have within them salt. And a lot of the vegetables that you're pouring them on are included in vegetables that are asked. David, are you with me? Yeah? Yeah? So, the problem is like this. The problem is this. The Taz comes along and says a Gavaldik Yisad. He says, he said, what's the heta that people used to make salad dressings? How'd you do that? You're not allowed. No, one ingredient at a time. I'm not talking about in a jar and then you pour it over. Right, 1 at a time. So you know what the Taz says? He says a Gavaldik Yisad. He says if you pour the oil first, and it's the betzim to Gemara, that the oil is machlish, it weakens the koyach of the salt, and therefore everything's mutter. So comes along the Taz and says you pour oil on the salad, then you can put salt on it. Then there's no problem. What happens if I forgot and I did the salt first? Say that, quickly pour the oil afterwards. It's the same idea. So the idea basically is, again, the same yesod. The tzad hashover again is, it doesn't look like I'm doing anything wrong, and it's not even going to do anything to the cucumber, because the oil over there, and the Gemara tells us that the oil is machlish koyach hamelach, and therefore there is no problem whatsoever. Now, who asked the question if it only applies to salt? You. So the Ma'aseh the poskim say that it generally only applies to salt. The Kesos HaShulchan, Reb Chaim Nor writes this mufurish in Siman Kuf Chav Ches by the Shulchan Sikot base, that there is no problem with anything else like pepper and paprika and all these things. Heilige paprika, because only salt who has the koyach. Right? The Pri Megadim says this in Yeridea when he discusses the inyan of melicha. When you take, what do we use to get out blood from chickens or meat? We use salt. Why? Says the Pri Megadim, because it has a koyach HaMeshicha. Okay? Gavaldik. Rabbi Yochai has a koyach HaMeshicha pulled over there. It's a magnet. Everyone's running. Gavaldik. Another thing as well, vinegar. For anything that's normally preserved with vinegar, obviously vinegar will be included in that case. That's a davar poshet ad ma'oid. Unless there's other things in there that will be weakening it, and therefore it's okay. What about sugar? Has everyone heard of this minhag? You cut open a grapefruit in half, and you pour sugar over it. It's not an American thing. Yeah. It is? Why do you do that? Because sometimes it's sour, no? It has beautiful taste. It has Gavaldic taste. Grapefruit is Gavaldic. It doesn't need salt, but sometimes it's a bit sour. It has a sweetness to it. Right? Don, you know what I'm talking about, right? People do these things. You're allowed to do that or not. So B'Shlomo Zalman was machadish. That since they make fruits, and they preserve fruits that way. You go to the shuk. They have every fruit you want that's been preserved, mostly in sugar. Sugar is a preserver. So according to Shlomo Zalman, any fruit that is normally dried will be asa to sprinkle sugar on Shabbos, with the inclusion of mango, strawberries, banana, pineapple, all these things. However, Lemaiser of Nissen, Karelet, Zatzal, and others were choylek on that, and they held that there is no problem with that whatsoever, because it wasn't Nichan and Chazal Gezerah. Okay, Rabbi, so that is the halacha for today. That is Ma'abed at Durabonon, a Chashvu Durabonon. Let's remember this. And Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we'll start a brand new halacha. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.